Hello YouTube friends and welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel and I make videos about quilting and my creative life. And today I'm actually on a sewcation, a sewing vacation or a sewing retreat. And me and my sister, we organise these every year where we come away for a long weekend and we sew a project together. Last year it was a quilt and you can find those videos on my channel. But this year we're going to be making a quilted dressing gown. So I thought I would bring you along for the ride of sewing my first ever garment. I'm a bit nervous. I'm going to be using an overlocker. We've got our sewing setup just here behind me, and this is the pattern that I'll be making. So this is the Merchant & Mills Sunday robe, I think, or is it called the Sunday? But the Sunday robe. So because I live in the UK, I wear a dressing gown all the time. I just love it. And for 9-10 months of the year, I'm in a fluffy dressing gown. But it's not quite the right time. We're just coming into spring, and but I'll still be wearing a nice fluffy dressing gown, I imagine. So the fabric that I purchased is this faux patchwork pre-quilted fabric from Higgs & Higgs. I don't think it's available on their website anymore. It pretty much sold out straight away, I think. And this is the reverse side of it. So you can have it either side. It would be really good for making a coat. And because the pattern is written for just woven fabrics, you know, regular weight of cotton, we are going to be modifying the pattern in some places. And I'm going to be adding some binding in this really nice contrast pinky colour. That does go really nicely with the underside where you'll probably see most of the binding. My sister's also got a pre-quilted fabric, so you'll be seeing that throughout the vlog as well. And this is the robe that my sister has previously made with a really nice Indian block printed fabric, and it's just a really nice lightweight summer robe that she's made. But we thought we'd treat ourselves and make a really nice plush one. It'd be like wearing a quilt, won't it? If you would also like to see what else we get up to on our sewcation, you can head over to my Patreon page where I'm making vlogs of visiting the local area and just doing the leisure things that we enjoy doing, as well as sewing while we're away. But for now, let's get the nerve-wracking part and cut out our fabric, our 5 meters of quilted fabric, and they're quite large pieces. We sat down last night and we cut out all the pattern pieces, so let's get cutting and sewing. So I think we've now done the hardest part when you're a beginner, and that's cutting out the pattern. And it was very hard to actually cut through 2 layers of the quilted fabric at times. So in the nice fuchsia contrast, I've got the belt loops, the belt ties and the tie to hang at the neck. Then I've also got the collar piece which will fold out, that will be in the contrast. And then I think there'll be binding around the bottom edge, maybe the top of the pocket as well. And then my the belt itself I did slightly modify from the pattern because I'm just going to bind this all the way along. I'm going to have a lot of binding to do. I hope I've got enough of the contrast fabric. And then these are the pockets, and by some amazement the pattern placement has come out pretty good. I wouldn't have minded if the pattern placement was totally different, but I guess I could choose to have it that way if I wanted. and then there'll just be a little bit of flash of the pink right across the top. So I think the pattern cutting is like the hardest part, isn't it? And then when you get sewing, it comes together relatively fast. But I think the pattern starts with doing the ties and all those fiddly bits where you need to turn it in and turn it in again, making tubes and all that type of thing. So I'll show you those. Well, we was well and truly burning the midnight oil last night, and let me give you an update of where I've got to on my dressing gown, because we actually managed to try it on with some clips at the shoulder seams. So that's one of the jobs to do today, join the shoulder seams. But first, this morning we are going to a quilt shop. So I've attached my belt loops and the inner tie. And I've also added a patched pocket, my first ever pocket, and it's been a success. So it's got the pocket placement on the pattern, so we just followed that, and I've added a flash of pink bind in there. Now, when I tried it on, the original plan was the collar that folds over to have this here that shows forward as the pink contrast. But when we tried it on, it just looked too much of a contrast. So I've decided to actually have it as the inside fabric, and it looks really nice. It just looked a little bit too block colour, because there's no block colour anywhere else. There'll just be these little flashes of the colour. It just looked too blocky. It looked like I was wearing a sash, like, you know, you get it Miss World. It looked a little bit like that. So on the agenda this morning, before we go to the quilt shop, I need to join the shoulders and some other things. I used the overlocker for the first time yesterday, and I'm going to leave the side seams without any bind, and I'll just leave the overlocking edge there. I quite, you know, it matches, it doesn't bother me. So yeah, it was my first time using it, and it was an experience, to say the least. So we've just come back from a day of gallivanting around town. We went to Calico Cake, which is a large quilt store in Wales. I think it might even be one of the largest that I've ever been to in the UK. There will be a video up on my channel giving you a little tour of the shops. But we're back at the cottage now. We do like to get a bit of a split between what we're doing when we're staying in and we're going out and seeing the local area. We like to try and divide the time so we're not just sewing all the time, even though sometimes we need to, because then we're on a time crunch. So on my dressing gown, what I've got left to do is I need to do the hem on the bottom. I actually want to take a little bit of length off the dressing gown just because it's a touch too long at the moment. Then I need to create the arms, inset seams. I've never done a sleeve, let alone an inset sleeve. I don't know if that's worse. And then I need to bind the entire thing. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my sister's garment that she's making. She's making the exact same dressing gown, but she's opted to have her seams on the outside so that it goes a little bit of a rag effect, you know, a rag quilt. Now, she's used pre-quilted fabric, the exact same. Hers is from Merchant and Mills, whereas mine is from Higgs and Higgs. So it's this really lovely olive green, and it's got a triangle design quilted. The back is a slightly different fabric, but same in colour, but just very different in texture. And then this one, it doesn't have any wadding inside. I think they advertised it on their website as natural fibres, but it almost looks like yarn inside. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a close-up view of that. And I think that's what led her to want to then do the rag seams, because it just looks really nice and it will go really nice and fluffy. So of course I'll give you a close-up when she does finish hers, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity to see it because there are so many quilted fabrics out there, and it's a great shortcut if you want to make a quilt coat or something like we are. So you can see here on the back, the reverse of the fabric is a much more open weave type of fabric, and this is the front. I guess you could have it either way, but yeah, this is the front. And then inside, you've almost got these fibres of yarn. So when she's stitching either seam, the seam allowance in the pattern anyway is 1/2 inch, which you would usually do in a rag quilt, but she's going over the seams twice just to make sure that everything stays secure. And then she'll snip into this, and then this will be showing on the outside. I'm not sure what she's doing on the bottom hem. I think she's just going round the bottom of the hem. It's really interesting, isn't it? But with this, my wadding inside of my pre-quilted fabric is polyester, but this is a natural fibre, so it'll be a lot more breathable. This one feels, they both feel the same in terms of the weight when you pick up the whole piece of fabric and now the whole dressing gown. So they are both quite heavy. Mine feels more airy and this feels a little bit more dense, but I think that's just because of how polyester is. You can see where I've been messing with this here. This
was such an exciting moment to turn out my sleeves and to put them on for the first time.
And you know where the collar folds out and you can see the underside of the collar while the inside of the dressing gown, she's opted to cover this fabric with a really nice contrasting Indian block printed fabric because she just thought this was a little bit too open weave to have on the outside because she also has cats. So she thought that this might pull the fabric, but I thought this was really nice and interesting. I'll also have to give you an update maybe in a couple of years on how the dressing gowns wear and if we have any issues with the construction, especially with it being my first garment, it might all fall apart in the wash. No, it won't because I've actually been overlocking. Yes, the first time on the overlocker, not too bad. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how this softens down on the inside perhaps. I will definitely wear my dressing gown much more than she wears hers because you can't get me out of my dressing gown usually. I look like I'm a dog handler. So we were just celebrating that I had pretty much finished the basic construction of the dressing gown. I've done the inset sleeve, put it all on. I thought, right, well, we'll try it on just to make sure before I commit to doing the overlocking. And I've done the sleeve completely inside out and wrong. I don't know how I did it. I obviously was just not paying attention, and it's not quite the design feature that I was after. However, I do like this with the cuff here, so I'm going to have to get the seam ripper out and seam rip the sleeve off. But apparently now I'm officiated into the garment making world when you've done something wrong.
After several late nights of sewing, it was finally our last morning in the cottage. And both of us only had a few jobs left to do. My sister needed to snip into her seams to give them that rag quilt effect. She made the snips quite close together so that you would get a really nice fluffy effect, but she is being very careful not to snip into the actual seam itself. And I just had the whole binding of my dressing gown left to do. We do also like to book our accommodation on Airbnb, because then you can be sure that there'll be enough table space, because of course they include pictures of the entire property. So we booked an Airbnb, and our one criteria was a nice period cottage, but also enough table space and enough natural light to be able to sew in. Because we wanted to be by the seaside this time, we did have to come slightly inland, because typically all of the properties that were on the coastal front were only small apartments that only had small little dining tables. So we came slightly inland and we got a larger property with larger area, which is great for when you're using these bigger pieces of fabrics like we have done.
So it's our final morning and I am almost finished with the dressing gown, and so is my sister as well. She's started clipping into all of her seams and making the seams really raggy, and it looks so good. It's like a rag quilt in a dressing gown, which I just find rag quilts so cozy. And me, I've done the binding around, let's say, 60% of the dressing gown, and I'm really glad that I didn't go for the solid collar bit here. I think the binding just makes a nice differentiating, line between the two. So it just adds a really nice pop between the two, doesn't it? And I've done the same on the collar. And don't you just love how you can see the quilting so much more on these bits? I've done a bit of binding on the sleeve. I still need to finish the binding on the belt, so hopefully I'm going to do that either on the car journey home or shortly after I'm home. There's 300 inches of binding on this whole thing because I had to measure it so I could cut enough binding yesterday. And last night again we was burning the midnight oil. Not too bad last night. I think we were sewing till just after 10, maybe half 10 we were sewing, but we both had things that we wanted to get to, like a certain stage. I wanted to get all of my binding attached, but we've said when we go on Sewcation next year, because we go every year, it's just amazing, we're going to go for 5 days, so we'll have 3 full days on location. And we've got a hanging loop here, and I've bound the collar. I did have a mistake. I shouldn't have joined the collar here, it should have been underneath, but I just got confused and I've just covered it with binding. You'd never know it was a mistake, would you? Let me give you a full twirl. Hopefully you can... Oh, I didn't show you my bottom edge. So I've got all of these that I need to sew. I've pre-clipped it because I'll be doing it in the car, but I've got those all around the bottom edge. It has got a tie on the inside, but I never really tie that. I think my belt has twisted somehow. The belt is a touch too wide for the belt loops. I think I cut mine a bit wide, but it doesn't matter, it all crumples down, doesn't it? But because I've got the binding bunched up, it's a bit funny. So I am back at home now, still working on the dressing gown. The binding is still being stitched on, but I haven't got that long to do. I've got about one side of the binding, just slightly less left to stitch, and then it'll all be finished, ready to wear. I have worn it without the belt though, and it is very cosy. Because it's cotton, it's a nice breathable fabric, so even when it is slightly warmer, I think it will still be a great dressing gown and you'll still catch me in it all the time. I hope you enjoyed watching mine and my sister's little sewcation. There'll definitely be one next year. We've already talked about where we want to go, where we want to stay, that type of thing. So we'll definitely be doing another one. And next week's video, I'll be showing you around a massive quilt shop that we came across called Calico Kate. So do stay tuned for that video. And until the next time I see you, you take care and happy stitching.